Chapter 14. Death of a Savior. Makoto watched from within his own body as blood dripped from the tip of his long blade after slicing through yet another bounty hunter's body. Watching is all he could do since surrendering himself to the darkness of Shinigami, who had total control of him now, making Makoto an unwilling passenger in his own body. Each time an opponent attacked, Makoto tried with all his might to take control for even a second, just long enough to allow an enemy blade to land a fatal strike. With his unborn child and the woman he loved departed from this world, all he wanted to do is join them in the next. But long as Shinigami controlled him, there was no hope. Now Makoto only watched as Shinigami slaughtered thousands. Shinigami prepared himself for the next bounty hunter. Over many years since Yasu's death and Makoto freely giving up control, they had been hunted by daimyo Nobunaga's, who had placed a large bounty for whoever brought him his head. It pleased Shinigami to have so many test his strength, giving him a reason to enforce the law. Since there was no daimyo who he served, laws Shinigami enforced were those he created. Shinigami studied the approach of his next would-be killer. Each step the bounty hunter took told him much about the way he was trained and how he would attack. By the time the bounty hunter had neared striking distance, Shinigami knew where he had been trained and what his plan of attack would be for this situation. With a smirk under the demon mask he wore, Shinigami spoke, "All crimes are punishable by death," then blocked the attack with the back of his sword, followed by immediately thrusting the tip into the eye of the bounty hunter, with it exiting the back of his skull. Holding his sword steady within his head, Shinigami laughed as the man's arms and legs flailed around as that of a fish on hot sand. His eye, without a sword thrusted through it, looked around frantically, as if trying to decide his next move. "Enough of this," Shinigami said, as he twisted his sword within the man's head, causing the same reaction as an off switch as his body went limp, dropping to the ground. "That was fun," Shinigami said, laughing as he removed his sword from the dead man's skull, flicking off the blood before sheathing. "When will your revenge be satisfied, Shinigami?" Makoto asked. "Revenge? I am justice. I enforce the law. After this pathetic attempt on my life, I know who sent these men. They weren't bounty hunters sent from Nobunaga, they were assassins sent by Daimyo Hideyoshi. Undoubtedly because you have mercilessly killed thousands of his subjects over the years. Can you blame him?" "Maybe, but that this has put him on my list, and justice must be served." Shinigami grinned. "This is what you wanted. You were trying to provoke Hideyoshi." While riding speedily to Daimyo Hideyoshi's palace, Makoto went silent as he did most of the time since making the regretful decision to allow Shinigami total control of his body. Shinigami rode with only one thing on his mind as he neared two large doors that allowed entrance to the palace. At each side of the entrance stood two guards who held their ground up to the point Shinigami stopped his horse feet away. Sitting straight up in the saddle looking forward, Shinigami never even glanced at the guards as he said, "Open." The two charged with security at the entrance for the palace looked at each other, and without hesitation pushed on the doors, opening them wide as Shinigami requested. Both had seen what had become of many others who annoyed the samurai, and at their current skill level, with weapons understood they were no match for him. As he rode by them through the two large doors into the palace, they could see dried and wet blood on him and his horse from others who had fallen by his sword. One item that drew their attention was that of a bag dripping with blood, containing two seemingly round objects inside. Shinigami looked straight ahead, confident that there would be no one with the courage to stop him while he rode his horse through the gate, across the open area where soldiers were trained, stopping just outside the door to the Daimyo Hideyoshi's palace. Dismounting his horse, Shinigami retrieved the bloody bundle hanging from his horse, allowing them to dangle by his side while he walked into the palace. Each step he took, the bloody bundle would swing slightly, touching the floor, just enough to leave a streak of blood. Strolling into the daimyo's palace floor, as if he were the daimyo, Shinigami spotted him sitting on his throne. "What is the meaning of this, Shinigami?" Daimyo Hideyoshi demanded. Removing his mask with his free hand, Shinigami smiled, then gave the bag he was dragging a swift thrust forward, releasing one end and holding the other between his fingers. Two bloody heads began rolling across the floor, leaving streaks of blood along the way. After they had come to rest just feet away from Daimyo Hideyoshi's throne, Shinigami said, "Seems I have found two of your palace guards out wandering around. Also seems they meant to do me harm. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you, Daimyo Hideyoshi?" Over the years, Hideyoshi had grown to fear Shinigami and regretted allowing him to set foot on his land, but now not even his most skilled warriors were a match for him. "I sent no such men. If I wanted you dead, I would simply request it, samurai," Hideyoshi said, with all the confidence that fear would allow. Gripping the top of his saya just below the tsuka, Shinigami felt anger boiling up from within. With a tight squeeze around the saya, his katana was free and ready to be drawn. Placing his right hand on the handle, he began to draw it with each step he took forward, closing the distance between him and Hideyoshi. Though he tried not to show it, Hideyoshi's eyes grew large and focused on the instrument of his death. Shinigami had closed half the distance between them. At that point, his katana was fully drawn and moving up in a strike position. In his peripheral vision, movement was spotted. "Ah, thanks for not making it this easy." Shinigami raised his sword to dispatch those nearing him from each side with swords at the ready. Stepping toward the nearest threat, Shinigami swung his katana and said, "All crime is punishable by death." Before the palace guard knew it, his head had joined the others lying on the floor. Quickly, he turned to face his next adversary, blocking a strike with the back of his katana. Knowing how palace guards were trained, Shinigami anticipated his next move. Seeing that the guard's right leg moved forward a half-second before his downward swing told him to step left to avoid being struck. Moving with the grace of smoke in the wind to his left, Shinigami brought his katana down on the guard's right forearm, slicing clean with very little resistance. Still holding his sword with his left as his right turned loose and fell to the floor, the guard looked at Shinigami confused as to what had just transpired. Slowly he lowered his one remaining arm still holding his sword and turned sideways, taking a bow. Without a second thought, Shinigami rewarded him with a quick death, removed his head with one fluid motion. "Now, Daimyo, it is time to pay for your crimes." Shinigami's smile stretched across his face, causing it to resemble the demon mask he wore. With each step, Shinigami could already feel his katana slicing through Hideyoshi's flesh. Drinking in the fear of his soon-to-be victim, he prepared himself for the kill. Shinigami could feel the slightest resistance as his katana sliced through air on its way to Hideyoshi's throat. "Wait!" the spy with no name shouted as she placed her naginata between Shinigami and Hideyoshi, stopping Shinigami's attack. "You do not tell me to wait! I am justice!" Shinigami shouted furiously, yet still impressed how she seemed to have come out from nowhere. "No, you are death. Nothing more, Shinigami. I curse the day I brought you to these lands, and weep for the thousands you have murdered in the name of justice," the spy responded. Hideyoshi sat fear-stricken with Shinigami's katana just a hair's distance from cutting his skin, the spy's blade holding death at bay. Daimyo Hideyoshi knew nothing of those assassins. "I sent them to correct a mistake made long ago. Now I have the honor of doing it myself," the spy said calmly. She thrusted her naginata slightly to the side, removing Shinigami's katana from Hideyoshi's throat and towards Shinigami's head. Anticipating the attack, Shinigami leaned his head and watched as her blade grazed his cheek, creating a slight cut, enough to draw blood. After a few steps back, Shinigami felt his face, and seeing blood on his fingertips, licked it off. Little by little pulling his finger from between his lips, he smiled. "You're the first to damage this body. Have to say, I do taste good. Now, let's see what you taste like." He pointed to her with his katana while making small circles in the air. Accepting his challenge, the spy jumped down the 2 steps where the daimyo's throne sat to the floor below. Eager to be gone with the man of nightmares, she charged in for her attack. She swung her naginata around toward her enemy for a strike, only to have it blocked and to immediately dodge a counter-strike aimed at her stomach. After defending and counter-attacking a few more times, Shinigami stepped back and held up his hand for her to halt, but remained at the ready. "You have been trained well, my dear spy. No other has lasted long as you against my blade. Unfortunately for you, I am always in a hurry to dispatch those who break the law. Playtime has ended." Shinigami let out a devilish growl as he leapt forward to deliver 2 strikes, only to stop just past the spy, feeling a stinging feeling on his neck. It wasn't until then that he remembered he wasn't wearing the mask that protected that part of his body. "How? Why?" he thought. Makoto replied, "I might not be able to control my body, but I was able to make you forget something simple as your armor. Now I can die with honor." Shinigami held his throat with one hand as he spoke slowly. "You think this will save you? It won't save either of you." Placing his hand back onto his sword, he went in for the kill. For the next long while the two would strike and block each other's attacks, until suddenly the spy with no name lost footing, as her foot slid in congealed blood pooled near the headless guard. Seeing his opportunity, Shinigami thrusted his sword out, contacting the spy between her breasts. With it deep inside her chest, he gave it a twist, opening the wound before pulling it free. "Thank you for the fight. I hope to meet others with your skill one day and defeat them as well. As your reward, I will leave you your head." Slowly, Shinigami turned to face Hideyoshi, making eye contact. Justice has been served. After breaking eye contact, he exited the room, leaving the spy to die from her wound. Once Shinigami had left the palace floor, Hideyoshi called for his personal physician and rushed to the spy's side. "You have brought great honor to you and your mother. Forgive me for the way you have been treated. Every peasant in our land will know of your sacrifice for your daimyo this day. Physician, now." The physician ran to her side, but upon seeing the hole in her chest, he knew there was nothing he could do. "My daimyo, we must find a kitsune tsukai. Fox familiar. It is the only way she can be saved." Looking down at the spy coughing up droplets of blood, he knew soon she would part this world. Regret filled his heart. "Then it shall be done. Hurry, get 2 guards to carry her. You know where the kitsune tsukai den is?" "Yes, my daimyo, but for it to work, she must feed it its favorite food. My apologies, daimyo. I do not know what that is." "Have some other guards capture 3 of my best koi fish. They are what the kitsune tsukai desire. Now hurry, before it is too late," Daimyo Hideyoshi ordered. "My daimyo, please don't trouble yourself. It was my honor to have served you," the spy with no name said, blood splattering out of her mouth. With the spy's mother passing when she was just a child, Hideyoshi was sure she had no clue of her bloodline. It had always been understood that daimyo children born by oiran, prostitutes, were never seen or were put to death. Something about this one, even as a baby, had captured his soul, yet as a daimyo, he could not have her known. That was to be no more. "Kichi, call me father." Though surprised, she always had suspected some connection, having been sent to all the most extensive fighting and educational schools available. "Kichi," she coughed out. "It means good fortune, for that is what I was to have had you. Now speak no more, but do not leave me. I am taking you to see the Kitsune Tsukai," Daimyo said as he placed his hand over her wound in an attempt to keep her blood from escaping her body. Minutes later, they were off with guards transporting Kichi on a stretcher, doing their best to keep up with Daimyo Hideyoshi and the physician on horseback. 3 guards with a bucket of water containing 1 koi fish each attempted to keep up, but at the same time retain water in their buckets. The path led by the physician winded through the woods and up the side of a great hill, yet everyone did their best to keep up, not just because they were ordered to by the daimyo, but because Kichi had been very respected by all. With those on foot beginning to fall behind from exhaustion, they came to the end of the trail, near a cave entrance. "Is this it, physician?" Daimyo Hideyoshi asked, knowing his daughter could soon draw her last breath. "I believe it to be, my daimyo," he responded. "You had better hope it is, or you will share her fate." Looking back to his daughter and the 3 guards holding buckets, Hideyoshi signaled to the guards to place their buckets near the cave entrance. They ran with the last of their energy and placed them down with the koi fish still alive, but with very little water remaining. Having an idea of what was about to take place, the 3 quickly retreated to the rear of the group. "Kitsune Tsukai, come and feast," the physician called out, his voice cracking in fear. "Kitsune Tsukai, come and feast," he called again, now even more worried about his decision to speak of this possibility. "Kitsune Tsukai, come and—" "Shut up, you fool," everyone heard coming from a large dark figure just inside the cave entrance. "I am Daimyo Hideyoshi. Do you remember me from when I was but a boy? When you tried to bind with me if I only gave you my koi?" "Oh, yes," the Kitsune Tsukai stated. "You turned me away saying daimyo need nothing from the like of demons. From the looks of this, it appears times have changed. I have no time for games and old thoughts. I call upon you to help my daughter, save her life. In return, you will have what you desire. Never again will you want for koi. We have a deal?" "Only the one with whom I shall be connected can make such a plea. From the sight of her, that is not possible." The Kitsune Tsukai pointed out from the darkness, revealing a reddish-haired hand with long, rounded claws. Such a sight caused the guards to run back into the wood in the direction they had ventured. Using what appeared to be the last bit of life remaining in her, Kichi struggled to her side from where her stretcher had been placed on the ground by the fleeing guards. Noticing his daughter's struggle, Hideyoshi leapt from his horse to assist. Kichi raised her hand to him, signaling for him to stop. Blood gushed from Kichi's mouth as she struggled with each step, not allowing anyone to carry her. After reaching the first of the 3 buckets, Kichi leaned over to retrieve the koi, only to collapse alongside. Gasping for air as blood filled the last free space of her lungs, Kichi fought to reach inside and succeed at getting her hands into the koi's gills. As her lips began to turn blue and darkness closed in from all directions, Kichi threw the koi just beyond darkness of the cave. Seeing that his daughter appeared to have passed, Daimyo drew his sword to keep true to the promise he made to the physician. "Look!" the physician shouted in glee. Fortunately for him, they both spotted the same hair hand and arm reach out and pull Kichi within the darkness of the cave. Returning his sword to the sheath on his side, Daimyo Hideyoshi replied, "Looks as though you have come through. Let's set up camp here. I am not leaving without my daughter."